Good morning and welcome to the fourth video in my series on getting through the Sierra. This video is on dealing with the cold. While most people have experienced short walks in the snow, living in it for several weeks is a different proposition. What may be just cold toes on a short walk can turn into debilitating frostbite in a matter of hours. Learning to cope with the cold, you can change your experience from a miserable time of suffering to an amazing adventure in a beautiful environment. In this video, I'll look at the methods of heat loss, the principles of staying warm, clothing layering system, keeping your feet warm, some of the common dangers of the cold, and then I'll go through some tips on camping in the snow. As a disclaimer, I am not a professional mountain guide, nor do I have any medical qualifications. This video is more of a summary of things to consider and what I have found works based on my army training, my experience in mountaineering and hiking around the world, including in 2019 on the PCT, I went through the Sierra solo in mid-May in a high snow year. I strongly recommend anyone who's going to be in a snow environment for more than a short walk to get professional training. Now onto the methods of heat loss. There are 5 main ways that you can lose heat in a cold environment: radiation, respiration, evaporation, convection, and conduction. Radiation is where the body radiates or leaks heat through rays or waves. This is combated by insulating around the body to prevent the heat leakage. Respiration is where heat is lost from breathing. The air is warmed in your lungs and then you exhale, resulting in heat loss. This is mitigated by breathing through your nose and using a neck gaiter or scarf to cover your mouth. Evaporation is where your body heat turns liquid into water vapor. For example, when you sweat, it evaporates away. The mitigation for this is to avoid sweating and to make sure you stay hydrated. Convection is a loss of heat through the air blowing over your skin. Wind on your skin cools it faster than still air. Wind chill can turn a comfortable temperature into a much colder effective temperature. The mitigation is to cover exposed skin and to take shelter from the wind. Conduction is a loss of heat due to direct contact with the environment. This can be from sitting on a cold surface such as snow or from your clothing. Wet clothes provide 5 times the conduction as dry clothes, and immersion in water is 25 the conduction of dry clothes. The mitigation is to use insulation between yourself and cold surfaces and to stay dry. So just as a refresher, there's the 5 ways, which is radiation, respiration, evaporation, convection, and conduction. So now that we've seen these 5 ways of losing heat, we can look at the principles of staying warm to offset these. The first one is to use a clothing layering system, which I'll go into more detail next. The proper use of the clothing layering system will ensure what body heat you generate is retained and cold air or surfaces cannot reach your body. It will also prevent excess sweating, leading to heat loss through evaporation. The next 2, adequate nutrition and adequate rest, relate to giving you more energy to allow your body to generate its own heat. Think of it like maintaining a good supply of firewood to feed the fire. You need to adjust your diet to ensure you're eating a higher energy diet, something which is difficult for thru hikers who are already struggling to eat enough calories. It's recommended that you plan on eating at least another third of what you've already been eating if you're going to be in a cold environment for a sustained time. Adequate hydration is also linked to the previous 2 in keeping your energy levels high, but also serves to combat fluid loss in respiration and evaporation. It's essential to remain well hydrated to ensure your circulation flows freely. Blood thickens when you are dehydrated, putting you at more risk of frostbite and hypothermia. Adjusting to the conditions is essential to ensure you can either adjust your clothing layering or take appropriate shelter to prevent you getting cold. Finally, frequent self-assessment, and if in a group then team assessment, is important. Some conditions, such as hypothermia and frostbite, can sneak up relatively unnoticed unless you're constantly assessing yourself and the others around you. Knowing the warning signs and actively looking for them can allow you to adjust to prevent the condition from worsening to a dangerous state. Now onto the clothing layering system. The need for layering your clothing when in the outdoors is well known, so this is just a quick refresher. The concept of the clothing layering system is to provide the flexibility to easily adjust to the changing environment and your activity to ensure you stay dry and warm. There are 3 layers used to achieve this: the base, insulation, and outer or shell layer. The purpose of the base layer is to wick moisture away from the skin. This is best achieved through merino or synthetic sweat wicking clothing. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. Merino has great temperature regulation and odor control properties, but can get heavier with absorbed moisture and be less durable. Synthetic is known for being more durable and excellent at moisture management, but less adaptable and can get really smelly. Of course, the advantages and disadvantages of both materials depend on their quality, and they're both rapidly developing technically to reduce their disadvantages and provide excellent base layers. The mid layer, also known as the insulation layer, is designed to insulate you to retain your body heat. This layer is highly versatile and may consist of several garments or a single garment depending on the conditions. These layers are commonly merino, fleece, down or synthetic insulation. They all have their uses and user preferences, and you need to do your own research to see which is best for your situation. The outer layer is also known as the shell layer, and it is designed to keep you dry and protected from the wind. This is usually a water and windproof jacket with a hood and trousers. The key factors when determining your best option for a shell layer are waterproofness, breathability, durability, and weight. These will be weighed with your expected worst case conditions on trail. I made a video on all of the clothes that I wore in the Sierras, and you can see it if you go here. From all of my videos of my time going through the Sierra, a common question I get is how I keep my feet warm. I went through the Sierra snow in my normal trail shoes and bar a few hours on a few mornings with my normal lightweight socks. My only change was the occasional use of plastic bags and occasionally heavier weight socks first thing in the morning. Several people who went through the Sierras at the same time as I did got frostbite. Some were of the same trail shoes as I had, and some are wearing heavyweight boots. So it just goes to show it's not solely about your footwear that affects your foot warmth. From my experience, the key things of keeping your feet warm are maintaining circulation, maintaining body warmth, and taking care of your feet at night. Keeping your feet dry is another factor, but this is usually impossible when through hiking in snow and crossing rivers, though a lunchtime foot dry out session is not a bad thing. Circulation is what keeps your warm blood from your heart moving through to your extremities. Anything that reduces this flow puts your feet at risk. The biggest issue is footwear being too tight. A common problem with through hikers is they're using their same shoes I've used from the start of the trail, but they often put thicker socks on in the cold, and this constricts their feet in the shoes, reducing circulation. Another common problem is hikers who have been using trail shoes decide to use their old boots for the snow section, forgetting how much their foot size has increased with through hiking, which now makes their boots too small for them, once again restricting circulation. Other factors that affect circulation are smoking and altitude, both of which constrict the capillaries, making it harder for the heart to pump blood to your extremities. The other factor is one that unfortunately cannot be adjusted, and it is simply that some people have better circulation naturally than others. This can be mitigated by the next step, which is maintaining body heat. When cold, your body responds by constricting the blood vessels in your extremities to divert all of your blood to keep your core warm. In order to try and keep your feet warm, you need to combat this defense mechanism, and the way to do that is to ensure your core stays warm. Put on more insulation to your head and your core, which will then release the blood flow to flow down to your feet and hands. Night care. As it's unlikely you'll be able to keep your feet dry during the day, the night is the time to pamper them and let them recover. As soon as you're in camp and your tent is up, take off your wet socks, dry your feet and clean your feet and let them air out. When the wrinkles, which you will get from having wet feet, fade, rub in some moisturizer and give them a good massage to get the circulation. However, if you have any sign of trench foot or immersion foot or frostbite, then do not rub your feet. Put on some dry socks and make sure you keep your feet warm throughout the night. If you need to use hot water in a bottle or a heat pad to heat up the foot of your sleeping bag, then do so. At the start of the day, consider using foot powder to absorb moisture or barrier cream to protect the skin before putting your wet socks back on. As I mentioned in my introduction, being immersed in a snowy mountain environment can be an unforgettable adventure, but it is one that can turn uncomfortable and even deadly very quickly. It's an environment that requires constant vigilance on yourself and the environment around you to remain safe. The following are the biggest risks in this environment and I'll go through each one in a bit more detail. Note, these are the risks to yourself. These are not the environment risks like avalanches and snowstorms, etc. Hypothermia. Hypothermia occurs when the core body temperature drops to a level where normal brain and muscle function is impaired. Your normal body temperature is at around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and hypothermia occurs when this temperature drops below 95 degrees. When the body can't cope, it goes into survival mode, shutting down non-essential functions. And then the hypothermia occurs when the body cannot make up for the amount of heat lost. The main factors responsible for hypothermia are wearing clothes that aren't suitable for the weather conditions, staying out in the cold too long, being able to get out of wet clothes or move to a warm, dry location, falling into the water, such as when you slip during a river crossing, not eating or drinking enough, and overexertion. The symptoms that you'll see, the person will feel cold to the touch and may be shivering violently. They'll feel tired and they may fall behind the group. So you always need to be looking out for the people behind you. They may be clumsy, uncoordinated, and may fall over and appear drunk. And their speech may be slurred. They'll be irritable and they may insist they're fine or resist help. They'll be slow to respond to questions. They may be irrational and they may insist that they're fine or even resist any help you try and give them. They may be slow to respond to questions. If their shivering decreases and stops, this is now a critical sign they're going into a more severe stage of hypothermia. The pulse and breathing may slow down as well. If you suspect hypothermia, the aim in managing the person or yourself is to stop further heat loss and warm the person slowly. If they are still conscious and are talking, get them out of the wind and rain as soon as you can. When they're in shelter, get them into dry clothes. But if you have a way to go to get them to shelter, don't put them on the dry clothes if there's a risk that those clothes will then get wet. Instead, protect them from the wind and rain by wrapping them in a bivy bag or a tarpaulin or anything else that's vapor barrier until you reach the shelter. Ensure they eat and drink. Carbohydrates, including sugars, will help their body produce heat. Do not give them alcohol. If they're conscious and talking and have eaten, then gentle movement will help them to generate warmth. Even if sitting down, they can move their arms and legs to try and generate some heat. If the hypothermia is mild and they've rested, had warmth, drinks, etc., then they're likely to be able to continue hiking at a reasonable pace, as long as they're not going back out into those same conditions. If the person is semi-conscious or unconscious, call for medical evacuation immediately. Move them carefully to shelter, and generally you carry them horizontally because in their weakened state they may collapse if you make them stand or they try and walk. Once in shelter, make sure they're well insulated from the grounds and that wrap them up in a dry clothes and a sleeping bag to try and reduce further heat loss. Try using warm water bottles, not hot, warm water bottles in the armpits, by the neck and on the chest to help reduce further heat loss. But be aware this will not be enough to rewarm the patient. The patient must be evacuated, as this is a matter of life and death. Do not give them food or drink because they may choke. And monitor their vital signs, i.e. their breathing and their pulse regularly, and give CPR if required. When you hand them over to the medical experts, they'll be interested in these vital signs, so make sure you record them and can give them a record. Just as a note, most people have heard about sharing body heat in a sleeping bag to rewarm a patient. Unfortunately, this will not help the people recover. It will help reduce further heat loss, but the rewarming of a seriously hypothermic person can only be achieved with specialist medical equipment. Immersion foot, or trench foot as it used to be called, is caused by feet that get wet and don't dry off properly. Immersion foot develops because the blood vessels of the feet constrict in an attempt to keep the rest of the body warm. This reduces the amount of oxygen and nutrients the tissues get. Without adequate oxygen and nutrient, the tissues of the feet swell and eventually die. And bacteria in the water can also trigger infections if there's cuts or abrasions on the feet. It's most common in temperatures of 32 to 50 degrees. However, it can occur in warmer temperatures. The key is how wet your feet are getting and how long they are wet for, not necessarily how cold they are. Some people can develop symptoms in just a few hours, but usually it takes a day to develop. The symptoms include tingling or itching, pain, prickly feeling, swelling, cold and blotchy skin, numbness, fissures, as well as maceration of the skin, swelling, blisters, and after a period of time, the skin and tissue dies and falls off. With treatment, prevention is the key to treating this condition. Limit exposure to the cold. Use socks designed to wick away moisture, and merino is excellent at this. Ensure the footwear is not too tight so there's good circulation. Clean and dry the feet thoroughly as often as possible, but a minimum of every night. And for through hikers, at lunchtime is another good time. Wear clean dry socks at night only if the socks are loose and are not going to restrict circulation. Wear clean dry socks as often as possible during the day. Use baby powder or talc to keep the moisture away, as in absorb the moisture. And use a barrier cream to insulate the skin to try and stop the water being absorbed. Treatment for this condition is very close to the treatment for frostbite. The following steps should be taken. Remove from the wet and cold environment. Clean and dry the feet thoroughly. Apply warm packs or soak in warm, note warm, not hot water, for about 5 minutes. With the warm packs, ensure they are closely monitored so that they do not damage the skin if there's a loss of feeling in the feet. While resting or sleeping, do not wear tight socks, which can restrict the circulation. Take ibuprofen for swelling. If the feet have any wounds, then make sure you check them daily because they are prone to infection. Don't walk on the feet if you can avoid it, and don't rub or massage the feet. Once the feet have been treated, for mild cases, the damaged tissue will appear red and sensitive, and this may last for a few days. For more severe cases, after treatment, the damaged blood vessels will open back up and that means the tissues will swell with excess fluid. This can be painful or tingling, and for some people it never goes away. Also, blisters can form and then ulcers where the blisters fall off if the tissue is dyed. And in severe cases, you can get gangrene. For most people, the suffering will last from 2 to 6 weeks. Frostbite. Frostbite is a type of injury that can occur when your skin is exposed to temperatures below freezing point. In these conditions, the cold may freeze the skin and the underlying tissues, potentially causing permanent damage that may even require amputation. It's most common in your extremities, such as your fingers, toes, ears, and nose. When you're in the cold, your blood vessels contract in a protective response to divert blood flow and oxygen away from the extremities and to the vital organs to keep your body alive. Lack of blood flow in the extremities and freezing temperatures can cause damage to skin cells and underlying tissue as ice crystals form in the cells, damaging the cells and blood vessels. Blood clots can also form in small blood vessels, further constricting blood flow. The factors leading to incurring frostbite include exposure to freezing temperatures for long periods of time, exposure to near freezing temperatures accompanied by wind or dampness, inadequate clothing, dampness, dehydration. If your blood is thicker, then it is harder for it to flow through your body. Increased altitude, restricted blood flow such as tight clothing and tight shoes, smoking which constricts blood vessels, and recent frostbite will also contribute to making you more susceptible to more frostbite. There are 3 degrees of frostbite, which are frostnip, superficial frostbite, and deep frostbite. With frostnip, the affected skin turns pale and is cold to the touch. Numbness or tingling may occur, and no tissue is destroyed. The treatment is to remove from a cold environment, gently rewarm by blowing warm air on the affected area or putting the affected areas into a warm body. Heating pads and fire should not be directly applied, as the loss of sensitivity may cause you to burn yourself, and don't rub the affected areas. After treatment, there's generally a full recovery. Rewarming will be accompanied by pain or tingling, and the affected area will usually turn red and should recover in a few days. Superficial frostbite is more serious and requires the attention of a doctor. The skin is white, usually with a yellow or blue tinge that varies in intensity. Ice crystals begin to form in the skin, and the affected area may feel hard when you touch it. And after around 24 hours, you may start to see blisters. The treatment for this is to remove from the cold environment and call for medical evacuation. Rewarming should occur as soon as possible, as long as it is not likely to be exposed to cold again, preferably the rewarming done by medical professionals. Rewarming is performed by immersion in water just above body temperature. Don't use heat pads, as they may burn the skin. Because the skin has lost sensation, you won't know if you're burning it or not. Never rub the affected area. Remember that there's now ice crystals in the vessels and the blood, so if you rub those, then you're now shattering the cells. After rewarming, take care to not let the area be exposed to cold again. After rewarming, do not let the affected areas touch anything, so no walking on affected heat or using affected hands. And you can use aspirin for the pain and to try and prevent clotting. After recovery, fluid blisters may appear and the skin may look blue or purple. Swelling is common, as well as a burning or stinging sensation, and it can take up to 2 weeks for recovery. Longer term, most people are fine, but some people will continue to have pain or numbness in the affected area. Deep frostbite causes blood flow to the areas to stop entirely, resulting in serious or permanent damage to the blood vessels, muscles, nerves, tendons, and bones. The symptoms are white, blotchy, and or blue skin, It may feel numb to sensations such as cold or pain. The muscles close to the affected area may not work properly. Blood-filled blisters may develop. Blood poisoning and infection may occur. The treatment for this is call for immediate medical attention. This is critical. The sooner it can be under medical supervision, the better they will be. It's critical not to attempt to rewarm the limbs if there's a chance they may be exposed to cold again. And rewarming should only be done under medical supervision due to the risk of blood clots and complexity of rewarming the areas. After rewarming, the area will appear black and feel hard, and that's because the tissue is dead and large blisters may appear. Recovery will be several weeks and may require surgery to remove the dead tissue. Long term, there may be lasting problems with pain, numbness, and increased sensitivity to the cold in the frostbitten area. Snow blindness. This is caused by the light reflecting off the snow. The symptoms are red or itchy eyes and sensitivity to light. It's an incredibly painful condition. There are a few people who got this while I was in the Sierras, and they were in a lot of pain. The treatment, stay indoors if you can, rest your eyes and bandage the eyes. And the prevention is simple. Wear sunglasses. Strongly recommend, if you're in the snow, put your sunglasses on. Even on cloudy days, still pays to be wearing the sunglasses. You do not want to lose the use of your eyes when you're through hiking in the middle of the mountains. Sunburn. This is another common one that caught people off guard. With my fair skin, I'm usually very careful with the sun, but even I got caught out. I got major sunburn around my lips mainly. Obviously, it's caused by the sun and the reflection of the sun off the snow. Red skin, painful skin on contact, and blisters for bad sunburn. The treatment is to moisturize, lightly dress the blisters to protect them from bursting, and if they do burst, clean disinfectant, antibiotics, and dress them to prevent infection. The prevention, protective clothing and sunscreen. And the key thing, when you're in the snow, you need to remember to focus on the light coming from underneath you. So underneath your chin and the base of your nose. And that's one of the common areas people were burnt, is around their lips and underneath their nose. That is the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful. And I do encourage you to try and get some training from experts on surviving in the snow before you head into the mountains. While the mountains are tough physically and mentally, the rewards are fair compensation, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do.